Tun Gamer. They were building a life-size 88 from Return of the Jedi and Book of Boba Fett. He's tall, he looks like a skeleton, and he likes burning naughty droid grippers. So let's get into the video. 88 first appeared in Return of the Jedi, where he was interrogating a gauntlet for EV-99. After 20 years of not showing up in Star Wars media other than merchandise, he finally appeared once again in the Book of Boba Fett by taking over Bib Fortuna's role as Boba Fett's Major Domo.
They wanna wonder.
Looking at the legs, I thought this guy was going to be really hard to print out as a life-size model. We found this guy's models on Droid Division's Etsy store. It turns out it's going to be one of the easiest to make due to it already being pretty split for it to fit on our printer, except for a few parts which I was able to split easily.
No!
88's head. This head is the easiest one I've had to print yet, but I had to print it into two separate pieces. So I sanded and glued it together to make it fit on one piece, as well as keeping it nice and sturdy. This is the scariest head I've printed out so far, which is fitting because he's Jabba's torture droid and later became Boba's droid. I printed the detailed parts separately so it's easier to print out and more accurate. It makes it look better on the model, and it will also allow us to make it better when we paint it, so we can then glue it on and make it look absolutely amazing.
Yes!
This head is also as big as my head, if not bigger.
I appreciate you being straight with me.
His eyes are have a little area where you can put red LEDs in to make him have the iconic red glow in his eyes. The LEDs have wires that can go from his eyes all the way down into this pipe and then into his torso, which will have a battery pack in it that allows his eyes to light up without it not working. For 88's torso, the model came in 7 different parts. Boom, 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 boom. We had to use a conduit so that it would stay sturdy when we were able to spin it around. The conduit is really cheap stuff that I had lying around, but it allows me to move around his bum, which is kinda handy. This part failed, so I had to reprint the remainder of the part, and I had to sand it, fill it, and glue it back together, which saved the 24-hour reprint. The legs fit in here and the arms fit in here, and then the head, this boy here, fits in by here. Each part had 3 shells and 5% infill, because I didn't feel like using that much plastic on it. This makes it have a very rigid structure, but it also makes it very light, which is really handy sometimes, because it means I had to carry it around without my arms breaking. He also has a cool electric back box thing that comes separately. It reminds me of an air tank on someone's back. Wow, super cool. I got this massive bag of things from an eBay seller that was linked to the PDF for the design. This ended up being very handy as I was able to get all of them, and they gave us stuff like barrel head nuts and cap nuts. You may be able to see I've put some in on the droid's arm. The arm was printed in multiple little pieces, and I've left out some of the minor details for after I've finished the painting. There was less movement than in most of the arms that I've done before, but there is still movement in it. His shoulders can also move, and as well as the wrist, but this isn't bolted together, so I'm not going to attempt to move it, otherwise it's going to fall. So overall, the arm is a pretty solid design and can probably hold something, but not something too heavy since it's still plastic. He's going to tickle some gonk feet with these grippers.
Yes!
The legs are one of the most impressive parts of this design, coming in multiple pieces, all ranging from small to long and even large. But the most impressive part is this thing stands together without any bolts in, though very weak. But as soon as I place in more bolts, it becomes so sturdy. There was some articulation in the knees and hip, and I think it might be able to have multiple poses, though I think in its face style it'll be able to stand on its own, which is pretty impressive. Some parts came split in the model, while other parts I had to split myself so they would fill my printer. We used super glue and we sanded it. The foot nearly filled my printer, but I had to cut off his heel and the very tip of his toes. So close. His feet are much smaller than B2's, but that's okay because he's a different droid, and different droids need different feet to stand on. Ooh! We had an absolute disaster.
Oh, how stupid of me. I'm terribly sorry.
I decided to use a pot of paint instead of spray paint, but then all of the pot paint that I threw on it became curdled with the thinner that I used, and it made it all weird and messed up.
It's not true. It looks great still.
So I had to wet sand it with 320 grit sandpaper all over the body before I could do all the spray paint again, which was a real pain. After finishing all the wet sanding, I resprayed it and gave it a nice creamy touch. So it still has some imperfection. I'm going to see that Droid's trying to get away. I've rock taped the edges here so that I could use gunmetal spray paint by here so that it looks more realistic. I think I'm going to repeat this on the arms and legs in the areas necessary. It makes it more realistic and makes it a bit more like the droid in the movies. The model of the droid had the greebly set to the body. It made it easier to spray paint, which was really handy. We put it in using this little part here, and it uses this as a point upwards like this. We placed it into these little things here, which we used super glue on the inside, and we have to put a lot of pressure in so that it goes in. Hopefully I don't smash it.
No!
Once I've placed the greeblies in the middle, I'll start with the feathering, and then I'll use my airbrush to do white zenithal highlights across the body, making it more accurate to the movies.
The zenithal highlights.
After adding the final coat of paint, I went towards the ear vents on the side of his head. I hadn't painted them before gluing them on to the side of his head with super glue. I also added some brown paint with my airbrush all around the body and in the side of the eyes.
Just make him sexy as hell.
Before assembly, I masked off some areas with the arms and legs before spray painting it gunmetal silver. This allows me to make it have a nice base coat and allows me to make it so that I can have an easier weathering job later on. Assembly went fairly well using the screws and bolts that I showed you previously in the video. The structural integrity on the legs allows it to stand up on its own. It even allows it so that we can have some poses on it, though it's not as much as the Super Battle Droid. I pulled out my airbrush to have an attempt of weathering. I used burnt umber ink. It turned out fairly well, so I decided I'm going to go and take it out to the garage and continue with the airbrush. I scoured the internet for images of 88, eventually coming on to this 1980s minifigure of 88 from the Return of the Jedi film. I've discovered that he needs to be a bit paler, so I'm going to go with a white spray and a white coat of using the airbrush to make him a bit paler and brighten him up.
That looked like Hitler.
This guy's lights were really easy to do, as there were only two basic red lights, although I did make the programming so that it would occasionally flick to a Christmas light model. The lights are connected to an Arduino that's then put through the back of his neck into either a battery pack or a cable into the wall. The eyes were really simple, but I could have just used red LEDs. I didn't though, because I wanted to use the RGBD LEDs and the Arduinos that I had lying around, which made it so it was a bit easier to do.
Can't be easy.
I highly recommend you guys build your own 88, as it's really fun and easy to build. He looks really spooky like a skeleton, so definitely make sure to not keep him in the corner of your view, otherwise he'll give you nightmares. He's really light and easy to carry around. The model is worth every penny. We're going through the models to find something to build next. I'm thinking about making a K2SO.
Congratulations.
So find out next time on 100 Tun Gamer. So I'm 100 Tun Gamer and I'll see you guys next time.